Outreach Director for 1,000 Women Strong. We're going to take a couple more minutes and then we're going to go ahead and officially begin. Thank you so much for joining us. Okay, we've got a large number of participants who have joined us already, so we're going to go ahead and begin. Thank you all so much for joining us. I'm Idana Walker, Director of Outreach and Partnerships for 1,000 Women Strong. I want to welcome you here tonight for another in our series of town halls. The subject is Black women in the student loan debt crisis. How are we organizing? So each week this summer, we are taking a different angle on the issue of Black women in student loan debt because we hold the highest percentage of any group. And we want to make sure as an organization, 1,000 Women Strong is committed to organizing around issues that are important to our community and to uplifting the voices of Black women and Black men who care very much about this issue. So to that end, tonight we are joined by several new leaders with 1,000 Women Strong, whose sole job is to work on organizing around this issue of lobbying to cancel $50,000 in student loan debt per individual. So I'm really excited by the work that they're doing. We're going to learn about their work. We're going to learn about their personal connections to this issue. We're going to take as many questions and comments throughout. Some of you are already using the chat feature. Thank you very much for that. Continue to use that and we will be able to see your questions and comments and we'll be able to share them. But I want us to have as much time as possible for the Q&A. So as I call them out, the team is going to go ahead and introduce themselves and then we'll jump into this discussion, okay? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and begin in Michigan with Nicole.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining today. I'm Nicole. I'm the outreach manager for Michigan, as Adana said, and I currently live in Oak Park, which is literally across the street from Detroit, so it's almost the same thing. I attended 6 schools in the state of Michigan, and 2 of them were community colleges, and I got an associate's degree, I got a bachelor's degree, and I have 2 master's degrees. And I had a very brief stint in law school. So if you're doing the math, I didn't pay for any of that. I have a lot of student debt. So that's why I joined, and that's why I'm a part of this campaign. And, you know, I identify as a Black woman. So there are all the things. I'm doing it for very selfish reasons.
Okay, thank you so much, Nicole, and welcome to the team. Next, we'll go to Texas, Summer.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name's Summer Lawley. I'm the regional outreach manager here at 1,000 Women Strong. So I cover mainly Texas, but I have Louisiana, Oklahoma, Nevada, New Mexico, Missouri, and Kansas. So I'm just kind of talking about student loan debt all across the country. I'm currently living in DeSoto, Texas. It's a small suburb of Dallas, Texas. And I went to a very, very PWI institution, predominantly white institution called Washington Lee University. And it's located in Lexington, Virginia.
Okay, Summer, thank you so much. Next, we want to welcome Tracy.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name is Tracy Kraft, and I am the Ohio State manager for 1,000 Women Strong. I currently reside in Dayton, Ohio. Our outreach work in securing signatures and organizing Black women is going to take place statewide digitally, but our on-the-ground field work will take place in primarily Dayton, Cincinnati, and Columbus. I'm excited to be working with 1,000 Women Strong on this issue and look forward to us pushing this movement forward.
Thank you so much, Tracy. Next, we're going to go to Kermit.
Hey everybody, my name is Kermit Thomas. I am the state outreach manager for the state of Georgia. I currently reside in Atlanta, but we will be, pushing this campaign out through the entire state. I've been doing community organizing for a little bit under a decade. The reason that I got involved with this campaign specifically was because I think in this country we're told quite often that education is the great equalizer, that once you get educated, you have access to the American dream. And that looks a lot different for Black people. It looks a lot different specifically for Black women. So I think it's important that we make that more attainable.
Thank you so much, Kermit. And then last, we're going to go to Shay.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shay. I am the Region 2 Outreach Director. So I have about 13 states, which include New York, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, DC, et cetera. And I attended a PWI, predominantly white institution. I just received 2 bachelor's degrees in government politics and legal studies, and I did not pay for all of that. And so that's why I'm here, as well as just being able to center Black women in this entire fight, just as much as we do in everything else. We haven't been centered in the conversation, and the fact that we have had these high rates of student loan debt, and no one's talking about us. This organization focuses on centering us. And I think that that's a presence that we definitely need to have in other spaces, and kind of disrupt the room and make good trouble. And so that's kind of why I'm here.
Shay, thank you so much. Shay was also a featured guest on our town hall last week, just 2 weeks ago, losing track of time, which centered on Generation Z and student loan debt, because we often overlook our youngest graduates and students in this conversation, and we don't want to do that as an organization. So thank you all so much. Again, so excited to be working with you all. And the power of organizing is shown right here in the fact that we have about 3 times more attendees on this call than we have had previously. You guys have helped so much and getting the word out already on your first few weeks on the job. So again, we're going to jump right into it. We covered this a little bit, but I want to go into it a little bit deeper because you all are organizers. But there are so many issues that are important to us as a community right now. So why did you join 1,000 Women Strong, this particular organization, in this moment? Any one of you can start, and then we can just go around the table.
Well, I'll jump in. This is Tracy in Ohio. I chose 1,000 Women Strong because, as I've said many times before, I'm an advocate at heart. Any movement that is going to center Black folks at the center of it, and in particular Black women, I'm on board. I want to be a part of it because we're always the ones lagging behind. So the fact that someone is focused on making us the center of an issue, I definitely wanted to be a part of it. So that's why I joined.
Thank you so much. Kermit, can you tell us why you, as a Black man, joined this organization that centers Black women?
Of course. I think I'm a believer in trickle up social change, right? I think a lot of times I hear folks say consistently, the Malcolm X quote, like the Black woman is the most disrespected person in America. And I think that the reality of that is that it's become kind of a, what's the word? Like a colloquialism that doesn't mean much when people say it. They say it to say it. They don't say it with any meaning behind it. But the reality is, because that's the truth, the work that we do to benefit Black women is the work that we do to benefit everyone, right? If we make this country a better place for Black women, we make it a better place for everyone. And not to mention, that type of work is long overdue.
Thank you so much. Kermit asked when we were getting ready for this, like, should I even be on this call? Because we're like, no, people need to understand that Black women are not the only ones fighting for Black women, that there are Black men who are fighting and leading for us. And that's so important, and we appreciate that. Thank you so much. All right, anybody else who wants to jump in, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I'll go. I joined 1,000 Women Strong because, I've worked with a lot of organizations, but a few of them are, center Black women and are led by Black women. And, that's just something, as I, got into this stage of my career, that I want to be you know, working on issues that matter to me and the ones that I love. And I want it to have a, you know, to be led by Black women, because we have a lot of organizations out there that are trying to do the work, but they're just not, you know, being led by, you know, the people who are they're trying to focus their attention on. So I have a lot of student debt, and, you know, being able to talk about all of the economic inequities that Black women face is something that, you know, I would love to do and am loving doing here at 1,000 Women Strong. So that's why I joined.
Thank you so much, Summer. Who's next?
I definitely echo what Summer and Cameron and Tracy have said. You know, when it comes to the work of Black liberation, I think that centering us in the movement is the most important thing. This organization does exactly that. And there's no other organization like it. And so I think what we have here is very unique. And the fact that if not all, but most of our leadership is Black, that is such a flex that I love to mention. Like, yeah, I work for an organization that is majority Black. Like, we are all Black. And that's such a gracious thing to be able to say. And I think that when we're talking about doing the work, you know, only us can represent us. Only us can really fight for us, like no one else can. And so I'm very proud and happy to be in the space where we can kind of cultivate and learn from each other and help each other grow and continue doing that work.
Yeah, I echo everything that's been said. But the other thing that I want to focus on is that, you know, there's an economic piece, right? So if a lot of these Black women who spend a lot of money in the economy, right? Like if Black women stop buying for a day, I don't know what would happen, right? And so the fact that we have that added student debt further limits our spending. And so I think that's one of the things that we touch on in this campaign. Like if you forgave $50,000 in debt for just Black women, everybody else, cool. But for just Black women, man, I think that would be a darn boom in the economy for sure. And so for that reason alone, because we know that they're not going to do things just because we're gorgeous and we're Black women, they're going to do it based on capitalism and those types of things. So I think that's another focus that we need to be focused on, because what everybody said is dead on, but the reality is it really always comes to the dollars.
Thank you. You guys have made some excellent points. Our very first week, we had, just by happenstance, 2 of the Black women on our panel were bankers. And I remember asking Rob, our chief program officer, is it okay if we have a banker? He's like, yeah, we'll see what they have to say, because we don't put any holds on what people say. And both of those bankers said, like, hey, this is bad for banking when people are not able to use their spending power for anything else. And we need to make sure that people are able to circulate their money through the economy and have a fair shake. And right now, that's not possible. And so, you know, the economic part, I think, is definitely one where we have been able to, I think, make some move, but we still need to work on, I think, on getting that outreach. So I'm going to jump around just to say, you know, when you're talking to people about this issue, even though I know it's early days, but you guys have been living with this, how do you answer folks who say, well, hey, I paid off my debt, or I don't have any loan debt, so why should other borrowers have debt forgiveness? You know, why am I paying for you? You know, if you can't cover your responsibilities? How would you answer that type of question?
I would say, even though I was the last person speaking, but I would say it's, and you know, you get kind of weird when you have certain logics and theories, but like, just like we all pay taxes, right? Like we don't always go down the same road, or we don't always use the same amount of, like you have to pay for things that help the whole, right? And so if it helps the whole, the least of these, then it'll help everyone. And so what's the term, whatever tide raises all, whatever, I'm messing that up, y'all know what I'm saying? But I think that's what it's about. It's not just about individuals, right? And it's like, great, you pay yours, that's great. But there are a lot of people who are suffering and they could benefit from this relief.
Yeah, and I echo Nicole. You know, a rising tide does raise all boats, and for sure, yeah, there it goes. Yeah, and for sure, you know, Black women are pretty much at the bottom of the tide. You know, lifting everyone up every day by the work they do, just regardless. But Black women don't get the pay that white men get. We leave college with more debt, and we see our counterparts getting promoted and into bigger positions well before all of us. So we're not able to pay off our debt like most people are as quickly as they can. And that's just the reality of being a Black woman. We do all the work, maybe get a little bit of appreciation, but that appreciation is hardly ever monetary. It hardly ever is, let me give you a raise, let me give you this promotion. It's, good job. And while I give the spoils to the rest. So I say, if we center, Black women who are always, derided, who are always insulted, everyone will win because Black women take care of everyone. So.
Well, and I think too that as we evolve as a nation, we talk about knowledge is power and education is key, but ultimately it's not free. And so at the end of the day, some people are leaving college with, way more debt than they, of course, entered in. And so as a country, I think there are some of us who are realizing that the old way of doing things isn't working. And so as such, we've got to be the advocates for essentially, in some cases, the voiceless to get these signatures, to get the petition presented so that the powers that be will see that there are people out here who support you that want this issue addressed and in a significant way. And I think that we're just learning as a country that the way we used to do things isn't always the answer. And so even though 50,000 may be more beneficial to some than it is to others, at the end of the day, everybody wins if we can be successful.
Amen.
And I'll definitely agree with that. And just as much as, people even in the comments have been noting, having so much student debt does not allow us to do anything else, right? It's like we're at a standstill. We're not able to buy a home. Even the thought of it, I'm 22 years old, right? The thought of buying a home, I'm like, when is that gonna happen? Like, I don't see it in the future. I don't see it happening. And then so we're talking about generational wealth, not just for us, but for our children and the next generation, right? And all of the hindrance that has when we have so much debt piling up on us. And so when we talk about reducing or even completely removing student debt, we're talking about the betterment of everyone else, right? And so when we have people that are like, well, I paid off my debt. Okay, you had the ability and the opportunity to do so, whether it was your field, whether it's because you didn't have to take out loans, or whether because your parents were able to pay for it. But not everyone has the same type of opportunity, right? And so we have to be able to acknowledge that there's an issue of equity involved into the conversation. And so the first thing I would do is talk about, well, how are you able to pay it off? And do you acknowledge that not everyone had that type of access and not everyone had that type of ability to be able to do so? And so now we're going to talk about the bigger picture, right? If you had a child and they didn't have you to help them pay off their student loans, would you want them to pay for school to begin with, right? Like knowledge, like Kermit said, knowledge is power, but if we're putting a tax on it, is it really something that we want to continue to encourage, right? And so that's an overall conversation of, why are we charging people for school, right? Like, why are we charging people for education? Why are we charging for people to be able to have something better for themselves and to be knowledgeable and be able to expand in whatever field that they decide to go into, right? And so that conversation needs to be also held within the same breath of reducing student loans and how we can kind of get to that point of, yes, we want to reduce and completely remove the student loans that exist, but how do we make sure that this is not a continuous pattern where every 10, 15 years, we have to fight for the same issue of removing student loans?
Right, Jay. Right. I just want to snap everything you're saying. Kermit, go ahead.
No, I was just about to agree with everything she said, just like you said. I think there's the interesting thing about conversations like this about things that force a kind of or they're tragic in an economic sense is that they affect so many different types of people, right? So the idea that you'll be having that conversation with a person who's white, with a person who's Asian, Black, within a bunch of different demographics, and the idea that they can say to you, I was able to pay it off, while also recognizing that folks like them weren't in those same situations. So it's very, it's indicative of what Shay was just saying, right? It's about recognizing the privileges that they have in those situations, the thing that separates them from folks who look like them. I think so many times when we have conversations about racial issues, the disconnect that we have with folks that don't look like us is that they don't understand what those experiences are. But when we get to stuff about like, healthcare, student loans, like we're talking about now, those are experiences that that exceed race in a way, right? They're worse for Black folks, they're worse for Black women, but they also exist outside of that in a different type of frame. And so it definitely gives us an opportunity to acknowledge that like your situation is different, right? Even in terms of not existing in a space like where you have some type of privilege as simple as your parents were able to pay for your education, but a privilege that is you did not get a terminal illness while you were in college, right? You did not get diagnosed with cancer and have to go pay for treatment. You weren't put in some position that you did not see coming, and therefore like the way that your money worked changed. And so it opens us up to a different type of conversation.
So true. You guys are bringing so much, and in the comments, I already see folks are just bringing up some incredibly important issues and reminding us this is not just an American issue, even though we're talking about student loan debt in this country. But as you look at the wider world, it also affects our standing, people looking at how we see ourselves as Americans and how they see us, looking at us, sending people into debt for healthcare, for education. My sister-in-law is Egyptian, and I told her, we were starting the series up, and she just looked at me like I was crazy. Like, what are you talking about? What is student loan debt? Like it's paid for, back home in Cairo. And I think we forget that when we are having these conversations, because we're essentially looking just at how we are impacted. And it's not just us, it impacts how we're able to communicate with others around the world. I've seen comments from folks also who were saying that, hey, I'm not a Black woman. I wasn't sure if I had a place in this conversation either. But now, again, we're all in this together. Appreciate you so much for those comments. Like Kermit has said, this is an issue that impacts everybody. If you don't have student loan debt, then you likely have someone you love who has student loan debt, whether that is your child, your parent, a sibling, a best friend, a spouse, in which case it becomes your debt as well. So we need to figure this out for everybody, I think, so important. So for those of you who, how do I say this? Whether or not you have student loan debt, if you do have debt, how does that impact your work on this campaign and the conversations that you have? If you don't have student loan debt, how do you approach this convo when you're talking with somebody who wants to connect with you, who is experiencing, who has $100,000 they're trying to get out from under? Do you have different conversations, I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah, I think that as I mentioned before, I'm strictly selfish. I'm just going to admit, and I do have a large amount of student loan debt. And so, I think it's also kind of a dirty secret, but like not really. So like they assume that if you have a master's degree, or if you're in a sorority, or if you're this, or you drive a certain car, you wear a good lipstick, but this debt is crushing me. And so people don't bring it up front, because it's kind of like when you think of debt, and we don't, as I think Kermit and Shay mentioned, like there's a lot of structural things happening that is not our faults, right? Sure, maybe we could have made this different decision and that different decision. And I think for myself, when I talk to people, sometimes there's a little shame that comes with that debt, right? Well, I should have made a different decision, or I should have thought about my major differently sooner. Like all of these things, what they're not factoring in is that they were the first one in their college, in their families, to go to college. They didn't have a roadmap. They didn't have a parent or someone to look to say, okay, no, go this way, no, go that way. We figured it out as we went, right? And so I think that shame, I talk about that, and I'm very upfront with that about, having student debt. And a lot of folks have just, I think a lot of us have heard, a lot of folks just said, I'm just gonna die with the student debt. They're gonna get it from me, they're not gonna get it from me. But I don't want that. I made up my mind even before this campaign, like a handful of years ago. In my mind, I'm like, I don't know how I'm gonna do it, but I'm gonna get from under the student debt. And so when the elected officials start talking about forgiveness, I was like perking up, like, okay, now what we talking about? What we doing? Okay. So when this organization came along, I was like, sign me up. And so, you know, back to your point, like, how do you talk to people? I talk to people like, hey, don't be ashamed of your student debt. Like, it's not your fault. Yeah, maybe we all could make different decisions, but it's a more of a structural, larger conversation than just you and the decisions you personally could have made differently.
Anyone else want to jump in on that, or?
I think what Nicole
Oh, go
said.
ahead.
I'm
Sorry, go
sorry.
ahead.
I think
Go
what
for it.
Nicole said was on point. I just I think that a lot of times, and I'm not disagreeing with this at all. I think a lot of times the language that we have around debt in specific spaces is that, right? We don't really know how to spend our money. We don't really know how to save our money. We don't really know how to put our money in the right places, right, to benefit ourselves. And so it puts a type of onus on us, like there is a responsibility for us to be better, right? There is a responsibility for us to understand the paperwork that we sign when we enter college. There's a responsibility for us to understand what an interest rate is when we're, you know, agreeing to pay one of those. But I think what's interesting about this specific conversation is that, like, even though that isn't like said about a bunch of other different type of people, this is a crisis that affects those same people, right? The people that we, in terms of compare ourselves to, when we say stuff like Black folks don't know how to put their money in the right place, we don't say that type of stuff about white folks, but white folks are also still dealing with a student loan debt crisis, right? And so I think it brings a reality to this conversation that this is clearly not, you know, our fault, right? Like, this is not something that, like, I could have been in a position to, I could have been in a position where I read every piece of paper with a fine tooth. I saw that the interest rate here was 2.1 and the interest rate there was 2.5. It still puts me in a position at the end of the day where I'm paying 2.1 interest and then I'm gonna die with it anyway. And so I just think it's important to keep that in mind.
Yeah, Fergie Lopez in the comments made a great one, that we should start from the frame that this is a predatory process, because we are talking about asking 17, 18, 19-year-olds to sign their lives away with information that lawyers who are well-versed in financial issues should be the only ones looking at, and accountants. And then we have expectations that when they hit 21, they're going to start paying it back. Or, okay, you're going to grad school, let's add another $200,000 to that debt. Now pay all the rest of it back, you know, and contribute to the economy. Or if you're a millennial, I'm a Gen X, so I could look at this from a different angle. You'll tell the millennial that they're lazy, you know? You'll just silence the Gen Z member because you're just a child, you're a baby, you know? And so there's this, we've talked about generational wealth. I think we talked a little bit about generational poverty, but I think there's also generational shaming that we need to deal with. Because that's not going to help us deal with this either. If you're saying to somebody, well, I paid off my debt from college, you know, 20 years ago, you should too. Well, how much did it cost you to go to school? You know, how much were your fees compared to what the fees are, the cost of living around? Shay and our other panelists last week, we had a very, very honest conversation about some of the things that current students are paying for in addition to their loans. And the other young lady mentioned that she was homeless when she started her master's program. Homeless. Went to a fantastic a college and then was going to a great bachelor's program, I think it was at Vanderbilt, and had to pay part of her loan for housing for herself. She mentioned that there are folks who, and we hadn't been talking about this before, it's a choice issue also, in terms of there are folks who have been paying, you know, who need that money to pay for family planning, you know, surgery, abortion, you never know. And we have some things and we put them on a bright line so we can't talk about them, but we need to talk about all of this in this conversation. We have so many great comments and questions coming in, and I think panelists, you can see these also. I really want to go ahead and get folks into this conversation because you guys are just being so great. So let me go ahead and let's see here. Let's try to go up to the top if I can. Emily Daniels said, I've never thought of really buying a house because I was a single mom while I got my master's and my doctorate. It seems out of reach and unrealistic. I am a Gen X white woman. She's telling a story that we can all understand. So can you all as panelists tell me what to you may have felt out of reach? Because in addition to doing your work, living your life, you also have these loans sitting on top of you.
Oh my gosh, almost everything feels out of reach. From student loan debt. I've delayed getting more schooling if I want to even do that, if I think it's worth it. You know, what is the reason that, we want a higher degree? It's most likely to increase, your pay and the positions that you get. But to stack on more debt on top of that, what else are you delaying? So you're delaying a family. I don't have any kids because quite frankly, I'm afraid I cannot support them. Even with the salaries that I get, that are well above the poverty line, I still don't think I can support a child, let alone buy a house. I feel like I can't even take on some of these credit cards, much less the cost for having a house. And I will say that one crisis could make you homeless and things like that. My parents took on student loans in order for me to go to school and have a better chance at life. But when my father got sick of, kidney failure and had to start doing dialysis, and we get all of these medical bills racking in, they were no longer able to afford to keep the house that I grew up in. So we lost that house, and I, couldn't help, was that, did my student loans have a factor in that? And of course they did. So it's just something that we're not able to build generational wealth. We're not able to, support ourselves in the way that we want to, because, even if we do graduate college, and a lot of these colleges make it, it's just mentally tolling to even go through as a, Black person. I went to a PWI and it was a lot. So a lot of the people, a lot of my Black classmates, including myself, did not graduate on time, didn't graduate at all, because of the toll of entering these predominantly white institutions. So, and then we go through those and have to go through, businesses and nonprofits or in organizations that are predominantly white, and they are a lot of times looking to maybe get a Black face for their newsletter, but they're not interested in giving the advancements and the pay raises that we deserve while we do excellent work. And someone said something about grind and hustle culture earlier in the comments, and I completely agree with that. I feel like that I have grinded and hustled and tapped my shoes, and to the beat, and they still don't think that a Black woman should be making that much money. They don't think a Black woman should hold that title. So a lot of things, even just kind of that the dynamics of just going out to restaurants and things like that. It's hard to even compete in that arena because we just don't have that extra money, because the economic equity isn't there. So yeah, I can keep going, so I'll stop though.
Thank you so much, Summer. What I'm going to do moving forward, I'm going to basically throw out a question, and then one of you will go ahead and answer it, and we'll go on to another, because I really want to hear from all of you, but each of these points is just so important. Okay, so I saw one in there that I actually going to read a comment and then a question. And the comment was from Andrea. The fact that most universities, at least in Texas, have food pantries on campus for their students shows that there are so many issues with fees and lack of ability to pay for even food, much less tuition. It's just a question. In what ways are Black women adversely affected by student loan debt? Like specifically, how is it impacting Black women? And how do patriarchal influences affect the student loan debt crisis? So I think it's two questions. In what ways are Black women adversely affected? And secondly, how do patriarchal influences affect the student loan debt crisis? And that could be, influencing anybody. So who would like to take that question?
I was looking at Shay because you know she the way she versed it earlier was really on point. But so if you just look historically, right, when you look at like just the rights, just let's deal with rights, right? When you talk about slavery, when you talk about being free, when you talk about voting rights, right? So, you know, as being part of a sorority who was very involved in the women's suffrage march, the first women's suffrage march, we had to march in the back of the line where white women got to vote, right? But Black women, people forget, didn't get the same voting rights as quickly as everyone else. And so we can't forget that. I think sometimes that gets lost in the sauce. And then you talk about women being property, right? When you talk about women not being able to shoot, it's still in the books in some places where women can't get a house without a man, right? Or get a credit card. So when you talk about that, then you talk about us, when you visualize it and talk about being ahead of the race, right? You look at this visualization of a track and like, okay, now you're 200 yards ahead. And even though you're 200 yards ahead, we gonna work it out. The ancestors got us. We gonna get that master's. We gonna get that PhD. Yeah, we got the master's and we got the PhD. But like everyone else said, we're saddled with that debt because we didn't happen to be born in the right family, right? So we have to pay it, right? And so we have to struggle up the ladder, and all the inequities and all the things that we have to deal with further puts us behind. So visualize that track again, right? So we making up, right? I used to be a sprinter. I'm gonna get you on that corner. I'm gonna get you on that corner. But dog it, I still got to hump like a dog when I get to that straightaway. And so that's what I visualize when I think of, you know, Black women. That's why. But still we rise. And I don't mean to be corny, but it's real. And we have more college debt because there were more of us going to college. Because in spite of all those things, we still persevere. And so you take all that historical drama and then you take all the other things, and that's why we're behind. I don't know if anybody else can, you know, add more to that and articulate it more, but that's.
No, I think you hit it. That was fantastic. Okay, so we're going to keep on moving. Thank you so much for Nicole for that answer. The other one I want to get to, here we go. It's about, okay, from Tamara. Being chronically ill and trying to get my master's, I feel super alienated. The grind is too much for me physically. Then it takes time away from me working, so less money to manage my health and school. I feel like I'll never get through. So that's not a question, it's a comment, but I would love for someone to address it because we know how real that is.
No, I would definitely love to tackle on this one. So I have a disability. It's called JRA. It derives from me having cancer when I was younger. And so it's autoimmune disease. And so that's kind of where it came from. And so being in school, and having to tackle also the fight of like my own body, right? Like having to fight the potential of it coming back, right? Of cancer coming back, of having to deal with my own health and how to manage it and up and how to not to get my parents, right? To kind of lean on them for supplying my own medication. It's very difficult. I actually lost myself they did not tell me that they were ending it. It was just a random moment that I just didn't have medication anymore. And I was like, what's going on? And my medication is worth $10,000 a month for me to just kind of stay afloat. And so I didn't have any medication for 6 months. Only because I was like, no matter what happens, I cannot afford to take out this much money and spend it just for medication. But it was also a life or death situation, right? And so for me, I was like, I have no idea what I'm about to do. I don't know what kind of predicament I'm about to put myself in, but I know that I have to make it to the next day. And so, oh, is there a background noise happening?
Yeah, Shay, sorry.
Is it okay now?
It's still kind of happening.
Oh no.
Can we, okay, not to come back. Yeah, can we just hop off and come right back? Awesome.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Shay.
I'll jump in just a little bit. I feel like I'm taking up space, but Kermit gave a very clear picture of someone being in the middle of a master's program and being in the middle of a program and getting cancer. That happened to me. Like I was in the middle of my second master's program and I was diagnosed with breast cancer 4 years ago. So that's a very real thing. And so what Shay said really hit home in that I was fortunate. So like you can be in two spaces at once, right? I can be privileged and marginalized at the same time. And so I was privileged because I worked for an organization, a union, AFT Michigan Forever. And I had good insurance because I worked for a union. If I didn't have that support, and if I didn't work for a state federation who had a president who was very accommodating, that's not even a union space. Okay, we're gonna say it, but we're not gonna say it. Even in union spaces, that's not always the case. And so being a Black woman and not always being comfortable to speak truth to power, and then being in the middle of a master's program, and like, I can't imagine. And it brings tears to my body right now to think, if I didn't have health insurance, if I didn't have health insurance, being in the middle of a master's program, and my advisor told me, she was like, hey, you can stop right now. But I knew if I stopped, I wouldn't finish. And so I was very fortunate and very privileged in a lot of ways. But at the same time, I can completely relate to that situation because I had breast cancer and I had chemo and I had radiation and I had all the things. And so being in that space really opened my eyes and really gave me a better appreciation for joining this organization because of that, because I know folks who didn't have what I had. So
Thank you, Nicole and Shay. I'm just, I didn't know which you had. We never know each other's stories, but it's incredible to know that, and thank you for sharing that. So obviously, it connects so many of us who are dealing with our health issues or the health of a loved one, which also can impact your educational process. I'm going to go ahead on to another question right now. And just know that if we aren't able to get to your question or comment, please follow up with us afterward. We're going to put our information into the chat, but we also are going to send out an email wrap up also. We want to make sure that we are staying in contact with all of you. Let's see. Rosalie says, I do not believe this has to do with financial literacy. I knew what I was signing up for when I did it. Neither the professionals nor the financial ones help us cope with the reality of the situation. I am a single mom, Latin woman, and that is no other choice other than to put all my chips on the table to survive, whether or not it financially kills me. What is the alternative? Rosalie asked the question that so many of us have considered. What is the alternative? Anybody want to tackle any parts of her question?
Oh yeah, I hate when people, say, well, you signed up for those loans, or, you signed up for that. Getting a higher degree is, a lot of times done out of necessity. Getting a degree, Black women are, always on the bottom of the ladder of almost everything that you can think of, except for, education. We're the most educated population, and that's because we have to be, because we are not getting the jobs that we need. We're not getting the raises that we deserve. We're not getting those promotions. And so when we start talking about financial literacy, yes, you should know what you're signing, but there's often no choice in the matter, because if you don't go and get your bachelor's degree, if you don't go and get your master's or even PhD or JD, you are not making it. You can barely make ends meet. We have families to take care of. We have children. We have parents. We have all our brothers, sisters. We and Black women, as I find, are the first to come and do the work and the last to leave. Doing a lot of the groundwork and not getting the recognition they deserve. So when someone, starts, saying, oh, you're spending money on the wrong things. No, we're spending money to survive. We're spending money to look good because, you don't like my hair. We're spending money, to take care of our health because you've stressed us out. And now I have a heart condition, so I beg people before they say, you shouldn't have signed that, or it's to think about it, and to think about, all the hardworking Black women, doing the thing in all the fields, and still not getting their pay and position and that they're worth.
Thank you, Summer. So I see a couple of questions that I want to tie together. And obviously, 1,000 Women Strong, we are an organization that centers Black women, Black women's issues. We want to organize on behalf of Black women because frankly, if we don't, then who will? We are partnering on this program with the American Civil Liberties Union. Very excited to partner with them on this program. They're not an organization known for having a large track record within our community. They came to us because they wanted to make sure that our voices are heard in this conversation, and they knew that they had a platform that could help to elevate that. And we are just so appreciative of that. And on that note, a couple of questions about how do we bring others into community with us on this issue, even as we continue to center Black women in our work. So anybody want to tackle that? Because as we talk about, this is impacting everybody. How do we bring folks onto this campaign with us?
I could definitely add on to this. So I do identify as both a Black woman and an Afro-Latina woman. And so I think that it's very important that even Latinos, you know, Asian, any other demographic also include themselves in the fight for this. Not only because it might personally affect them, but also because of the fact that they have, like, recognizing that Black women are the most underserved in our community and in America. And so you have to play your role and play your part in also uplifting Black women into the conversation, just as much as Black women uplift them and everything else, right? Like in every art, any protest, any conversation, any site of injustice, Black women are there no matter who it is. And so I think that's very important that we make the distinction between people who can be allies and accomplices and what that type of work entails, and really partaking into the uplifting of the voices that are the most marginalized. And so I think that we need to be, you know, diverse, we need to be vocal. We need to be able to center people that need to be centered in the conversation while still being supportive of that. And so I would say there's room for everyone. Obviously know where you stand in the conversation. I think that level of education is also very important, like knowing where your role is, right? And knowing that you aren't the one that needs to be centered in the conversation right now, but you should be there. You should be advocating. You should be talking about it because you do have a voice, you do have a certain type of privilege that can uplift our voices, and so you need to be able to tag along, I would say, in that conversation, and utilize your privilege for good, right? Like you have a privilege that no one else really has, and so use it for the upliftment of people that can't.
And I think it's important to mention too, that while our focus certainly is getting the Black woman's voice into the conversation, I think ultimately when we're successful, everyone wins and everybody benefits. So it's not just about Black women while we are advocating and working towards bringing us to the fold. Everybody that has student loan debt will win when we are successful. So everyone has a role to play and the conversation has to include everybody.
Thank you, Tracy. I want to tie this into some other work that we are doing as an organization because I think it all just kind of dovetails together. So this weekend, we are taking part in a weekend of action around the Voting Rights Act. And each of you is leading one of those actions in a different part of the country. I would love it for you all to tell us about what you're doing this weekend and give us more information or tell us where we can find more information about joining you in your particular region. Why don't we start with you, Tracy?
I'll be in Jacksonville, Florida this weekend. That's about all I can tell you about the event. Okay.
She's not from Jacksonville. She's flying in because she's a hero. So I'm sorry I put you on a spot like that. I forgot. All right. Let's go ahead to Nicole in Detroit.
Hi, so there's going to be a visual at the Detroit City Airport. It will be at 8 a.m. Vigils don't happen at 8 a.m. Vigils happen in the night. So 8 p.m. And if you're interested in that in the Detroit area, you can come to the Detroit City Airport, a historical spot, 11499 Counter Street at Building 2. We will be outside. I will have t-shirts and swag and all the things. So I hope to see you there. And how can they join is the question that you asked, Donna.
Mhm.
I will search around and put something in the link in the chat.
Thank you so much. And you can find our events on Mobilize if you guys are familiar with that. Okay, Shay, why don't you go ahead and tell us not only about your event, but about our larger event, like what we're all organizing around this weekend, if you wouldn't mind. You're on mute though.
Can you hear me now? Awesome. So this weekend, I will be in Philly, Pennsylvania. We will be doing a virtual / Good Trouble happy hour. So definitely come through. It's gonna be free, open bar. Okay. The food, music, and great vibes. And I think the overall, goal is that John Lewis it has done amazing work in the voting rights, and then really being able to kind of extend that and really make sure that that does get implemented into our congressional and Senate spaces, and ensuring that we are able to take it to the next level when it comes to advocacy for us, especially when it comes to voter suppression. And so instead of celebrating, I would say instead of seeing his death as a funeral or in a depressive mode, really celebrating the life that he lived and the trailblazer that he was when it came to everything regarding the advancement of Black people for voting rights and so much more that he has done. I'm gonna send the link in the chat right now. Okay, perfect. Okay, we got it. Awesome. The link has already been sent in the chat. And so if you are free at 5 to 7 on Saturday and you are in the Philly area, it's going to be at the 700 bar. Please come through. I will be there. I will have t-shirts for all of you. I will have some really cool swag. And we can just have a really great conversation and socialize and meet other people that are also about this movement and really bringing folks in. And if you want to volunteer, also, I'm going to send that link in the chat too.
Thank you so much. All right, Summer.
Hi, everyone. So we're having our event in Austin, Texas. Before the actual Candlelight Vigil, we'll have a happy hour at Black Star Co-op. Black Star Co-op is a great brewery that pays their workers a living wage. So that's, I wanted to go in and support them. And that will be starting from 4 to 6 p.m. We'll talk a little bit about 1,000 Women Strong and ways that you can plug in. And then we'll shut down and go to the state capitol where the Candlelight Vigil is. So I hope that all of you guys in Texas and the Austin area can attend both events.
Thank you so much, Summer. And before I go to Kermit, let me just say again about Tracy, because I hate that I put her on the spot, that you guys have to understand how amazing an organizer you have to be for someone to say, well, we're going to have an event there. Who can go because you don't have someone staff there? Boom. And here's your ticket. Go ahead, make magic happen. And so thank you to Tracy for going ahead and putting together that vigil for us in Jacksonville. I know it's going to be awesome and amazing. Information about it is in the chat that we just put there. But again, thank you so much, Tracy. Kermit, can you tell us about what you're doing in Atlanta?
Yeah, we are going to be holding the vigil. Well, actually, it's a celebration of life in Atlanta, a happy hour. It's going to be a good time. The players going to play. We're going to ride on them things like every day, We're going to live it up. We're going to be at the Zari Cafe and Lounge. I think we start at 3:30. We're going from 3:30 to 5:30. We're going to have some speakers there and just, try to have a good time, celebrate his life, but also talk about the next steps in this campaign, as well as, where we can go as people to continue his legacy.
Thank you. And of course, all of this ties together. I mean, voting is so much a part of this issue because we would not be talking about lobbying our president to cancel student loan debt if the president was that other man. We have to make sure that we are protecting the right to vote, that we are honoring people who have fought so hard for it, and we continue to protect this right for the next generations. And so we're very excited to take part in this effort with the groups that are forming it. And we also always look for other opportunities to partner with organizations who are doing good work. Because as someone said, if it impacts Black women, you know, we are going to organize around it, and we want to make sure everybody else is able to celebrate. There's something that people keep bringing up in the chat that I just think I really want to go back to, because it comes back to this whole issue of getting debt canceled, how it happened in the first place. And that's the issue of shame. So many of you have talked about that, about how you were ashamed of having this debt, ashamed of talking about it, ashamed that you did not think you'd ever be able to get out from under it. And that just you know, obviously is so infuriating and so unfair. And I know that makes you feel like, you know, that there's kind of, you're living by yourself and you're alone. I hope you see right now that you are not alone in this. One thing we can do as an organization is action. So can any of you and more than one of you jump in and talk about how we are working together to act on this issue, so that we can lift this awful feeling of shame that people have over something that, frankly, that they did not start and could not control. Any of you want to jump in on that, please?
I'll go. One of the things you mentioned is when you talk about shame. So like therapists and all the counselors will tell you, you know, how to get rid of shame is to shed light on it and not keep it in the dark. And the direct way to do that is to tell your story, right? And it's not always comfortable, and you might need a little help telling it, and you might do it through some choked tears, but telling your story, and we're offering that to people to tell their stories about having student debt. I think that's one of the most important things, is to get the words out. And if you can't get the words out, you know, write it down. That's one way.
Thank you so much. Anybody else want to jump in on that?
Just echoing Nicole, because she killed that. I think when you do tell your story, you realize how much of a shared experience this all is, right? I think a lot of times when it comes to this specific issue, we talk about it as if like we are the only people that have student debt. Like nobody has student debt as high as my student debt, you know? And then when you pay attention to it, it actually turns out that a lot of people got more than you do. A lot of people got the same amount as you. We've all been told the same stuff. We've all been told that college is going to change everything. We've all been told that like once you get your bachelor's degree, if you get your master's, you're just at this different level. You get a PhD, you're at this different level. But the reality of it is we're all just trying to avoid like the boogeyman, which is like living, not obtaining the American dream or living under a certain amount of income, right? They say that like not they say, but I was reading an article the other day that was like the best like household income you can have to live a okay life in America is $70,000, right? Nobody makes that in terms of an average, right? The average household income in America is I think 60,000, and then for Black folks you're talking like 40,000, right? And so it completely changes the dynamic when you look around and say, hey, actually, you know, I have student debt, I'm in the bad place. You know what I'm saying? You have student debt, you're in the bad place. Let's have a real conversation about like the fact that we need to be moving this conversation forward for all of us, and not just me holding on to it saying I should have made better decisions not to be in this space.
True. Any of you want to talk about the petition work that you're doing? I think that's a really important part of this effort that we're putting together.
Yeah, I can definitely touch on that. You know, agreeing with what Nicole and Kermit had said, a lot of this resonates with a lot of people. And so what we have to do is be able to take a lot of the experiences that we're having and putting it into action. And one of the ways that we can do that is by talking to our elected officials, talking to the president, right? And the vice president, being like, hey, majority of people are having the same issue, and we need to do something about it. And so by having the petition signing, campaign allows us to show that there's proof behind what we're saying, that we're not just screaming to the abyss. You know, we're trying to say something that resonates with so many of us. And so I believe all of us have a goal of getting about 10,000 signatures in each of our states and regions. And so that's the overall goal, to get to over 100,000 signatures within the next few months, right? And so we have a little bit of time to do this. The link was just set in the chat. Thank you so much, Nicole. So that you can sign on if you haven't already. You can share it with your friends. Even if you are one person, you can share it with 5 other folks. That's already expanding that number and expanding that reach for us to get to that goal, right? And so this allows us to show that this is a problem. It's happening to far too many of us, and we need something to be done about it now. And we really can't wait. You know, like we really can't wait for the student loan to keep, adding up. The interest, I know some of us were talking about the interest rates, especially in the chat. They're crazy. These 2.5, 5%, 20% of interest rates on student loans is going to continue to pile up. And so we need action now, especially coming out of a pandemic, talking about how are we going to be able to kind of recover our cities, recover our businesses, being able to start new businesses and things like that. We have to talk about what is currently hindering us from being able to achieve that and continue moving forward, and completely removing the student loans that we all have is the number one way to do that. And so if you haven't signed the petition, definitely go ahead and do that. So that's going to allow us to kind of get to the next step of this fight.
Thank you so much, Shay. There are two questions I want to get to, and then I would love for you guys to talk about your regional town hall series that you're going to be starting. So I'm going to tie them together. The first question was, basically, so should we just start telling our 8th graders just to make other plans? That was the first question. The second question was basically, well, where is Kamala Harris on this issue? So you can answer like with your personal opinion. We can talk about the elected official part of it. I just would love to hear you guys input on that. What do we tell 8th graders right now? And where are our elected officials on this? And how can we learn more about that?
On to the what do we tell our 8th graders? I would tell our 8th graders that they could be anything they want to be, that you have generations ahead of people who are, getting student loans, going to college, and, striving for all the things that they want to be. Let them know that college is not for everyone, but they are welcome there, and that we are fighting to make it accessible for all, especially our little Black girls. Tell your 8th grader that there are also ways that you can make money in skilled labor jobs. There are apprenticeships to all types of skilled labor that you can go and earn a good living. So I don't put your fears on the children. Just work hard, work like hell to make sure that they can do whatever they want to be, whether that go to college, or whether they're a fireman or welding or anything like that. So yeah, that's my part of the answer.
Thanks, Summer. I'd love to hear everybody's answer on this. What do we tell our 8th graders?
Yeah, I definitely echo everything Summer said, but I would also say, and I have to bring it back, I have to, but 8th graders are Gen Z, right? I guarantee you they are in the streets right now talking about this. They're in the streets protesting, they're in the streets having conversations about these injustices that exist. And so I would say it's not necessary that you have to tell 8th graders what the issue is, because we see it, right? We're experiencing it. Our parents, our older siblings have experienced it, right? And so this is something that we're currently going through, which is why you're seeing such a massive amount of Gen Z saying we're going to go against the standard and going against the norms that have been placed on us, and we're going to go against that. And why you see so many people who are Gen Z talking about, I want to start my own business. You have 12, 13-year-olds, 8th graders, right? Launching out their business as a YouTuber, launching out a whole brand, right? Like they're doing the thing. We're doing the thing. And so I wouldn't say necessarily that, but more so of encouragement. I think what 8th graders need to hear is encouragement, that keep doing what you're doing, keep fighting for the issues that you're fighting for, because we do hear you and we acknowledge your voice in this fight. And I think that's what they need to hear more than anything, because sometimes that can get lost in translation where you don't feel supported, right? And so we don't feel that. And I've had conversations with, I actually have a nephew who's in 8th grade, and I've had conversations with him before where I'm like, do you feel heard, right? Like, do you feel heard in this conversation? Do you feel heard talking about some of the issues that we face? And sometimes they say no. And so having that conversation of, how do we bring in, millennials, Gen X, boomers to kind of be like, you know what, I see what you're saying, and I acknowledge that it is a problem, because why is it that, you're 40, 50 years old and you have student debt as well, right? Like, we're all in the same situation, in the same similar boat, where it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be a norm. It shouldn't be okay. And you're right. So keep advocating for that, keep fighting for that, and keep, protesting about these issues because you're making your voice heard. And so that acknowledgement is something that eighth graders really, really need to hear.
Thank you, Shay. All right. Kermit, Nicole, Summer, Tracy. I forget who's already spoken on this issue. I'm sorry.
It's okay. So I don't know if you want me talking to the eighth graders because I might use some cuss words and be like, look here, like
Be real.
Be super real. Look, hey, you better get you 2 or 3 skill sets and figure it out no later than 9th grade. That's what I would tell them. Just like Summer said, no, just like Shay just said, like, these kids is way more brilliant than we were. Side story, I date someone who's in education, and I was like, is it me or do I feel dumber? Like Gen X representing. And he was like, no. They've developed more research. They know how to teach now. So like that math, when you look at the math, you'd be like, oh, I was carrying a 1. They don't do that, right? Because they've done all these years of research, and now they really know how to teach kids, and they're coming out quicker, smarter, stronger, brighter. And that's not a coincidence. And so I think we're gonna be all right. I think the 8th graders got it figured out. I think someone said, don't worry about it. They gonna get it handled. So that's what I would say. I would say, just take care of me when I'm old in the nursing home. Just take care of me. That's what I would tell them.
Thank you, Nicole. All right. Whoever we haven't heard from, I'd love to.
This is tough. I think I struggle with this a lot because I feel like this conversation is so unique in the space that it is, because you're between like a rock and a hard place. Like you hope that, like, even in terms of the conversation, you hope that there is some truity. I think most people do, to the idea that I have added this and this degree to my resume, so it makes me economically better. And so it's hard to break away from that terminology when you're thinking about what you're going to tell your kids or somebody else's kids, or like if like just a kid running up to you and say, hey, like, I don't want to do school, I want to do something else. It feels like I can understand, I think, how many of us would react in types of in like the way of not truly understanding how to flesh that out. But I think it's important. I'm just going to echo what everybody else has said here, because I think it's incredible. I think it's important to recognize that kids are incredibly intelligent, but also their hope works differently. They have a vision of the future that is like not pessimistic, right? They have this idea that, if I have this idea that, like, if I get into Harvard, I'd like, now at my age, I'm like, God, that would be crazy expensive. They have this idea that they could just go to Harvard, and so because of the way that their hope is set up, because of the way that they're like want to accomplish things is set up, because of the way that their vision is set up, I think that in a weird way, I think they got it, and my job is to support, right? I think they can lead a conversation on this issue that is like, I shouldn't have to. Also, I think what a lot of people call entitled, I think it's just like the essence of recognizing that you're a human being that deserves better. But they can have a conversation that, like, I should, if I'm if I feel like I'm smart enough to go to Harvard, I shouldn't have to come out $100,000 to be there this one year. That seems ridiculous to me. And at this point, there's this meme that's out now where I don't know what show it's from, but it's like this guy comes in, he asks his kid, he said, what you doing? The kid said, fighting with my granddad or something. He's like, yeah, right, let's stick it to the old people. And that's how I feel. Like, I think that characterizes where I'm at. Like, let's not stick it to all the old people, but let's stick it to the folks who like continue to push this narrative that, things have to be the same way. Things can't be challenged in the way that they are. And so I think that's important.
Tracy, bring us home strong. Oh, you muted yourself, Tracy.
My bad, I'm sorry. I agree with what everybody has said. I think I would just probably keep it simple. If I'm talking to an 8th grader, encouragement is definitely something that I would do, letting them know that just to keep pushing forward. Don't get caught up in what the adults are doing or not doing, but just continue to move forward and do the best and be the best at whatever it is that you want to do, be that securing a master's, a doctorate, going into entrepreneurship or a specific trade, whatever it is that you want to do, move forward and keep pushing to get that done. And on the back end, trust that we, 1,000 Women Strong, are advocating on your behalf to make sure that you don't leave with the same level of debt that some of us have incurred.
Amen. Amen. Thank you all. So I guess I'm going to go ahead and wrap up and answer the question about about Kamala Harris with what our founder, I'm so sorry, my dog is acting up. From what our founder, Shakia Cherry Donaldson, said during our first town hall, and that was, we want to have a conversation with Vice President Harris and the president, not a duel. We definitely want to have a conversation. This is very, very important to us. We worked hard. Many folks on different partisan sides of the last election. We deserve to be able to have an audience on these important issues. And we're not going in there expecting a fight, but we will have the conversation in the terms that need to be had. It's very important to us to make sure that they know how important this issue is to us as a community. And so we're gonna keep that pressure up as much as we can. Each one of you all is leading a town hall next week. And I know that you're gonna put more information about that. You can into the chat. You can share that. Elsewise, if anybody wants to share information about their regional town hall, which will replace this one next week, please go ahead and do so. We'd love for you to tell us. You don't have to tell us your guests if you don't want to, but just what day you'll be having your town hall, and if you've set on that yet.
Yeah, so I wish I could put a link in. I can't do that yet, I'm sorry. But it's gonna be next week, which is what, 7 days from today is 22nd. See that math. 22nd, and the focus will be Gen X, Black women, and student debt. Because again, I'm gonna lead with myself because I'm very selfish, I will admit that. And so I'm focused on me always first. And so I'm a Gen X person, and so I got my Gen X peeps to talk about. That's right, let's represent. And we're going to talk about it because it doesn't feel great to be heading into your 50s and still have student debt. So that's what we're going to be talking about next week.
Thank you, Nicole. Anybody else want to share? I know everyone doesn't have their set yet.
Yeah, I don't have my panel completely set yet, but the topic is going to center more around family planning and abortion access, and even the things we do to put food on our family's table. So this is for everyone who wants to join. You'll get a link soon. So,
thank you, Summer. And a reminder, you don't have to live in the region. That's where the person lives who's hosting. We want to make sure you guys know that each of our regional leaders is going to be having one. So I know, again, that several of you are still working out your panels and all of that. So we will be able to share more information with you over the weekend. And just thank you so much to the fantastic regional leaders who have signed on and joined 1,000 Women Strong, focusing on this particular issue of student debt cancellation, but also just a larger project of centering Black women in the work that we do, and working in community with everybody who is looking to thrive. Anybody has a last comment they'd like to make? I just want to thank Adriana, our data guru, who is keeping us all on track during this conversation, keeping us online. But if anybody else wants to say anything before we sign off, please go ahead and open up your mic and go ahead and do so.
One thing that I will say is that there are a lot of people when I've talked to about this who've kind of said, oh, that'll never happen. It's, too much money and things like that. But one thing about, organizing and advocacy is that, we have to shoot for the stars, and we have to work like hell to get to the stars. So don't let the naysayers, say anything, because if we didn't have a dream, we wouldn't get there.
Thank you so much. So I just want to thank the audience. You guys have been fantastic and engaged, and our largest audience ever, which I totally owe to the wonderful regional leaders putting the word out. We hope you will join us for the regional town halls next week, and the following week we'll go and do another national town hall, and we'll just kind of trade off with them. We hope to see you at our events online on our Facebook group. Please sign the petitions. Please sign up to volunteer. And just stay active and engaged in all these issues and know that we will be out there in the streets with you. Okay. Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful evening. Happy birthday to my father who turned 79 today. Okay. See you all later.